Can you believe what my future mother-in-law did at her own daughter's party? She tried to publicly humiliate my mother and me with a nasty gift. But what happened next? My fiancé dropped a truth bomb so explosive, it made her run out of the room in tears. So Mike and we just got engaged after almost 7 years together. 7. And honestly, I've always gotten along with his whole family except for his mom, Sydney. She's never been nice to me.
Why?
Because she's a total snob. Her family is seriously rich, and she doesn't think I come from the right kind of family. It's really that simple. Most of the time, her behavior is just petty, so Mike and I usually let it slide to keep the peace. We're not really confrontational people, you know? But a few days ago, something happened at his sister's party that just crossed a line. Mike's sister, Jess, turned 21, and her dad threw this huge bash. My mom was even there, which made what happened next even more painful. Mike and I showed up after work, so the party was already buzzing. My mom arrived a few minutes later, and that's when Sydney called out to me and my mom, asking us to come meet her friends. I thought, this is fishy. She was being extra sweet, and even Mike felt it. So he stayed right by my side as she introduced us to all these strangers. Then, out of nowhere, Sydney announced that she wanted to officially welcome me into the family with a gift because she hadn't given me one after the surprise engagement. For a second, a tiny part of me actually hoped maybe, just maybe, she was turning over a new leaf. 7 years, after all, I reasoned. Maybe she's finally accepting me. Boy, was I wrong. She handed me a wrapped present and told me to open it. I did. Inside? An apron. I was so confused, and it must have shown on my face. I'm no chef, and I have zero passion for cooking. Why an apron? Then she clarified it for me. She said, now it's time for you to get to work. I'm sure your waitress mother must have taught you well. My blood ran cold. You see, I was raised by a single mom. My dad bailed before I was born, never sent a dime. My grandparents helped babysit, but they couldn't support us financially. So my mom, in her final year of college, had to drop out and start working odd jobs. Waitressing was one of them, and she did it until I was in middle school before moving into sales. Her struggle, our struggle, it's not something I'm ashamed of. In fact, I'm fiercely proud. My mom always made sure I had enough, even when we didn't have much. I don't come from generational wealth like Mike does, and I don't care. The values my mom instilled in me are worth more than any bank account. But in that moment, in front of everyone, I knew Sydney's only intention was to humiliate my mom and me. I just froze. Couldn't speak, couldn't move. The whole room went silent. It was so awkward. I could feel the pity in the air. My mom was on the verge of tears.
But then my Mike, my amazing Mike, he stepped in.
He didn't want to just whisper a defense. He grabbed a karaoke mic from a nearby setup and called for everyone's attention for a toast. All eyes turned to him. My heart was pounding, wondering what he was going to say. He started by praising his dad for throwing such an extravagant party for Jess's 21st. Then he dropped the bomb. He said, you know, a decade ago, my parents probably couldn't have imagined throwing a party like this. And it's all thanks to Sydney and her family. The silence in the room became deafening.
People were confused.
Then he went on. He started talking about how almost 10 years back, Sydney's parents, his maternal grandparents, had declared bankruptcy. Completely broke. And they had started relying entirely on his dad to get back on their feet. He told everyone how difficult that time was and how the whole family likes to pretend it never happened, but it was the absolute truth. He explained how his father, even though doing well with his own dad's business, had to put his dreams of starting his own company on hold. A huge investment, postponed indefinitely, all because Sydney's parents were completely dependent on him. And the worst part? They weren't even willing to compromise their lavish lifestyle. They pretended all the money they were spending was their own. They'd run their business into the ground because of financial irresponsibility and their refusal to adapt, but they wouldn't admit it to anyone. So his dad silently supported them. Sydney herself couldn't have done it because she got married right after college and had never worked a day in her life. She just wanted to maintain the same lifestyle she grew up with, without earning a single penny of it. Mike didn't stop there. He revealed that his maternal grandparents lived off his father's money until their dying breath. And no one ever spoke of it. The only reason he was bringing it up now, he declared, was because he wanted his mother to realize how absolutely hypocritical it was to try and demean me for not coming from a financially stable background, constantly implying I was only with him for his money, when she herself was no less than a gold digger. He continued, saying that at least my mother was an honest, hard-working woman who made a life for herself. She supported herself, raised me, and was there for her parents, all without any outside help. Sydney, on the other hand, with all the resources in the world, she and her parents still ended up relying on his father for money. And she still was. He reminded her that if his dad decided to leave even for a day, she'd be left with absolutely nothing, dependent on alimony she didn't even deserve because she'd never done a day of hard work in her life. He and Jess were practically raised by nannies and babysitters, with staff handling everything else. All Sydney ever did was go on expensive shopping sprees and exotic vacations with her husband's money. He ended his speech with a mic drop, giving my name that apron, humiliating her and bringing up her mom being a waitress. That's not the dish you think it is. It's honestly just a pathetic attempt to put good people down. And I'm ashamed that you are my mother. Just like you should be ashamed of your parents and yourself. Just like they left you nothing in the end, you're going to be able to leave. My name, absolutely nothing. But as for my mom, even if she couldn't leave me anything financially significant, at least I'll have all the memories of good times we've spent, the values and lessons she's taught me. And that will be more than anything Sydney has to offer. Then he grabbed my hand, asked my mom to come with us, and we walked out. We didn't say a word until we were in the car. My mom broke down, sobbing, thanking Mike. I couldn't speak, just cried happy tears. I knew, right then, that I had chosen the right man to marry. It felt like justice. When we got home, after dropping my mom off, Mike even apologized for not standing up to his mom sooner. He felt like if he had, she wouldn't have had the audacity to pull something like that. But I don't blame him. Who wants to constantly pick fights with family, especially over petty things? Her attitude was always bad, but it never really hurt me, so we didn't take it seriously. No one could have predicted something so ridiculously disrespectful. His dad and Jess, they've always been great to me.
But now?
The rest of the family seems to be against us. Sydney hasn't called, but his dad and Jess have sent endless messages, heated arguments on the phone. We found out from Jess that Sydney was so humiliated by Mike's toast, she sobbed hysterically and ran out of the house right after we left. Mike's dad thinks Mike's speech was unnecessary. He said we should have just left or talked to Sydney privately. He admitted what Sydney did was messed up and he had no idea she'd do it, but Mike's reaction was extreme because he had an audience. Jess agrees there was no need to air family secrets publicly, even if everything Mike said was true. They're upset because Mike made the speech in front of so many people. But Mike and we believe we'd put up with her stupid remarks and insinuations about me being a gold digger for too long. Some things just can't be left unanswered. So, yeah, the speech was personal for the family, but it had to be said. And honestly, Sydney didn't think twice before insulting my mother and me. So no, I don't feel bad for humiliating her. I think it's fair. We were totally conflicted, but after talking to friends and my mom, we decided to apologize to Mike's dad and Jess for spilling personal family matters publicly, but absolutely not to Sydney. Even they acknowledged what she did was messed up. We realized we probably shouldn't have dragged them into the speech, since they weren't involved in her horrible behavior. Mike's family has always been good to me, so I'm willing to acknowledge that we might have overstepped by discussing things they wanted private without their consent. But that's it. Sydney still hasn't apologized. I don't even care if she apologizes to me, but she needs to apologize to my mom. My mom has always been nothing but kind, treating Mike like her own son. She didn't deserve that public attack. A few weeks later, we got an email from Jess, speaking for her and her dad. She said she understood we'd reached a breaking point, but it was still wrong. She claimed our apology felt half-hearted because we were sorry they felt bad, not for what we did. She said we messed up their family's reputation. But here's the kicker. They did tell us they'd told Sydney she needed to apologize to us. They said her pretending to be the victim wasn't working, and her being upset that Mike called her out was hypocritical since she tried to do the exact same thing to me and my mom. And for no reason. If she couldn't take it, she shouldn't dish it out. Everyone knows what Mike said was true anyway. Now, Sydney isn't speaking to them either. She's completely on her own. I'm glad they aren't siding with her, but it was still a confusing email. We eventually responded, doubling down. We were sorry for offending them by speaking about something they didn't want public, but we were not sorry for doing it. We had to stand up for ourselves. Mike's dad got really mad after that, saying if we weren't going to apologize, he had nothing to say to us. That stung. We were disappointed, but we weren't backing down. Jess told us Sydney had even left home to stay with her sister, saying everything was too toxic. Nobody was worried, though. She'd be back. Jess said she wanted low contact for a few weeks until things cooled off. It was sad, seeing Mike so affected, even if he tried to hide it. But finally, last week, his family reached out. Just his dad and Jess. Of course, Sydney's too proud to admit any fault. His dad called, invited us for dinner to talk things out. We went, and surprisingly, Sydney was there. She looked shocked to see us, made a face, and immediately left the room. Mike's dad told us to just ignore her. At dinner, his dad apologized. He said he'd done some serious introspection and realized we were right, that none of us were wrong in our own places, and the best thing was to just move on. He didn't want to lose his relationship with his son, especially with our wedding coming up. Jess seconded everything. It didn't take long to sort things out. We've decided to let bygones be bygones. They want us in their lives. We want them in ours. As for Sydney, she can do whatever she wants. It doesn't concern any of us anymore. We don't even expect an apology from her because either way, she's not getting an invite to the wedding. And you know what? I'm completely at peace with that. What about you? What would you have done in our situation? Have you ever had to draw a line with family like this? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.